EIKON, internationale Zeitschrift für Fotografie und Medienkunst.
Yeah, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to KunstMatt. Today, I welcome as my guest Spencer Tunick, one of the most well-known American photographers. Thank you, Spencer, for being here.
Thank you, Gerald.
Tunick is best known for his temporary installations of nude people, mostly posing in landscape or urban environments as iconographic symbols. Tunick has completed more than, I think, 70 or even more than 70 installations, big installations. Started in 1992, began photographing nude people in the streets of New York. There were also some problems. You were arrested. We will talk about this. And since then, he performs his big installations around the world. Spencer Tunick's models always work for free, but in return for their participation, they get a photograph signed by you. And Tunick himself sees his images less as nudes and more as landscape sculptures. And I think we'll talk about this too, that your work can be placed in the context of land art, participatory art, going back to the 60s. So Spencer, back in Vienna, you did two projects here, projects we even cooperated. One was in front of the Museumsquartier, the other was in Stadion in the context of the European Football Championship. One was more intimate, like 200 to 300 people participating. The other one was like 1,000 to 1,500. What made this project special for you and what changed since then?
Well, in 1999, the work that I did with 300 people in Vienna was very gestural. It was very much like an action painting. My early works, because I was so used to being stopped by the police, I would rush and I would just make the works very quickly. And so when I came to Vienna, even though I had the permission of the government and the local authorities to work, I still had that New York mentality and I felt like the police were behind me. And so it was just like a rush to make the works. And even though it was quick, it still felt good, very much like an action painting.
Right.
And then the works at the stadium were much more orchestrated. I had a lot more time. Obviously, it wasn't in the middle of the street. It was outside, inside the stadium and on the steps. And I had more time to think and reflect and come up with ideas.
Mm-hmm. You said you were arrested in New York in the time of when Giuliani was mayor. And I remember that our mayor at this time, Mr. Heipel, was happy that you did the project here and said Vienna is different. In Vienna, art is allowed. Just to go back to that. But do you have any idea how many people participated in your projects during your whole career?
I'm sure that it's over 150,000. Mm-hmm. And in a way, I think of it also as there are 150 8 by 10 inch photographs out there that people own. So I have a lot of collectors. Yeah.
Why do you think people want to be in your photos? I mean, it takes a step, no, to present yourself nude in public. So what does attract them? How do you win them?
I think it's the excitement for people to be nude with a purpose. It's not just a lifestyle event. They're not going to the beach and lying down, and they're actually doing something with their bodies, and it's collective. Many people have told me there's a holistic quality to participating. And I think most of the people are engaged with art or museums or contemporary art, and they want to be a part of something and own something afterwards, like have an exchange, get that print in exchange for posing.
but it's not always comfortable. I take one example. This was your Swiss project on a glacier. It's fairly cold up there, no? What was the aim of that project, by the way? And how did you win the people there?
I was approached by Greenpeace to orchestrate one of my works, and I could work anywhere. And they suggested, how about working on a glacier? And I had always thought about working on different terrains, but I never thought about going deep into a glacier as opposed to on the edge of a glacier. When I was in Alaska in 1997, I photographed my wife nude on Exit Glacier. So I've already had an experience one-on-one with a nudity on a glacier. And when Greenpeace approached me, they told me that Joseph Beuys actually proposed a project to them and they turned it down.
Wow.
So they said that they wanted to work with more contemporary artists and not turn anyone down, to really hear them out. And so I think they're into activating in a nonviolent way issues with working with artists. And so when they asked me to make a work, we scouted many different glaciers. I came beforehand and we chose Aletsch Glacier. And again, it was an environmental project to raise awareness for the disappearing European glaciers.
Can you say something about the way you work, about how a project develops, maybe even about the organization, because it sounds very much like a logistic challenge, what you do, yeah? So do you wait that people ask you for projects, or just give us an idea how the whole thing works?
Well, it's very organic in that I don't have an agent that seeks out group works for me. Usually a curator from a museum or a director of museum will contact me and ask if I want to do an installation performance within the context of the museum, but in the city. Sometimes they wish for me to do a work with the museum, but most often I can work wherever I want within a city that the museum is situated in. And then I scout. I take a trip out there with an assistant and I scout the locations and come up with ideas. And then maybe 4 to 6 months later, I go back and do the works. I bring a crew of it used to be 6 to 7 people, but now since COVID, I'm traveling with 4 to 5 people. And I work with maybe 25 volunteers to 50 volunteers when I'm at the location. And the best way to get people to participate nude is to get the word out there in the city. And so the museum will write up a press release, release it, and then everyone in the city reads that they have an opportunity to participate, and there's an exchange, participation and an exchange for an artwork, a photograph. And then it's up to them to have discussions at the dinner table with their family members. Are you going to do it, or are you not going to do it? Do we stay up all night? What do we bring? What don't we bring? You know, how long will we be naked for? And so the mystery begins.
Are there local differences? Were you sometimes surprised how many people participated, and maybe sometimes disappointed that you didn't find the amount of people you were looking for?
Yes, I think that people often think that it'd be easy to find participants to get nude in places like Austria and in Germany, because we think of the idea that people are nude all the time, especially in Scandinavian countries. But in a way, it's more difficult in those countries to get people to participate nude because when you think of the stories of people coming back from Germany, oh, we saw naked people in the park, but it was only like maybe 50. You know, it wasn't 50, 5,000 or 500. So the idea of society being comfortable with nudity doesn't mean they're comfortable in participating nude with their neighbor. I find the most countries most eager to pose are in Latin America, in the United States, more conservative countries.
Right. Spencer, how did everything start? When did you take the decision, I want to be a photographer?
I come from 4 generations of photographers. My great-grandfather opened the first codec processing plant in New York City.
It's nearly genetical.
Yes.
Okay.
My grandfather was a photographer, my father, and now me. They weren't art photographers, but so I was the first one to think about studying it. So I took a course at Emerson College in photography, and I fell in love with it. I thought I would be interested in filmmaking. I took a few courses in filmmaking, but I decided it took me too much time and energy to organize a film crew. Now I'm organizing hundreds of people, but back when I first started, the pressure to organize, 5 people like you're doing here to film something was daunting. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just work one-on-one.
It's not so long ago that we opened an exhibition of your work in Palermo. And the title of the exhibition was Neue, which is an art historical category. In which art historical context do you see yourself? I mean, we were discussing before about the 60s, maybe Kaprov, Christo performances outside. Where do you place yourself?
What
did influence you?
Well, I've always been influenced by Yayoi Kusama's late 60s performances in Central Park, at MoMA, on the Brooklyn Bridge, where she would organize maybe 6 to 7 people, nude, outdoors, often covered with circular polka dots. And then Carolee Schneeman's group performative work. So I've always been interested with the documentation of performance. And at the same time, I'm interested in staged photography. So I guess my work is photography as performance. And I'm not so much, I'm not only am I the director, but I'm also the photographer. I think we're used to people that are working in groups where the director stands next to a photographer and the director is the artist, such as like Vanessa Beecroft. But I think what I do, I like doing both because in my mind's eye, I have this specific framing that I want that I can't trust to anyone else. And so that's why I'm very associated with both performance and with photography.
If you look at the beginnings of your work and now you look at the work now, what were the major changes?
I think the threat of arrest has a lot to do with how I work.
So it means more time.
More time.
No danger of being arrested.
Right.
But also more people. No? You started and black and white. You started black and white, taking just 1 or 2 persons. And now it's much bigger. The whole scale of the project changed. No?
Yes, I started photographing one-on-one nudes on the streets of New York City between 1992 and 94. And then 94, I did my first group work in front of the United Nations. And I never thought that I would continue that. I was like, okay, I did my group work. Everyone that wanted to pose for me one-on-one, I finally photographed them so I can think about doing something else. But then I thought, wow, what if I handed out flyers on the streets of New York? And so I made offset printed, beautiful invitations. I handed out 1,000. And then for the next work, 100 people came. So that's how it started. I would walk the streets of New York during the day and during the evening, and I always would have a pocket full of flyers. And if I saw someone interesting on the streets, I would hand them a flyer. I would avoid people wearing suits like yourself, because the chance of them wanting to get naked might not be as high as...
Sorry, I participated in your project.
I know.
I'm wearing a suit, but which I put off at that time.
So early on, in the 90s, I would mostly hand out flyers downtown, Lower East Side. and in the village. And then the works changed in that when I was trying to make works quickly, I would have everyone drop on the ground and sort of like, a live Jackson Pollock. And then when I had more and more time, people started standing. I had a ability to shape the people into different into different formations.
You were already speaking about the relation of photography and performance, but there is also this element of sculpture, no? It's also a temporary sculpture. Is that important for you, this idea of creating also a kind of public sculpture?
Yes, I really like this abstract organism that my works form. Obviously, the people are alive, breathing, often giggling and having a great time. But there is the element of another world, an outer worldly feel to the work. I try to stay away from the idea of death with the work. One of the reasons is might change from black and white to color. I felt that black and white was too much of a documentation of war, especially, 1940s and 50s. And so then I moved on to color, and it livened the whole situation up. But the sculptural element is very pleasing because it's quite loose. It doesn't have to be regimented. It's sort of working with liquid, like liquid paint.
What's the relation of plan and chance in your work? I mean, you choose a location, you find a location, you start with an idea, and how does it develop then? You take chances.
Yes, I do take chances. I do around 3 to 4 locations when I do installation now. And in these locations, the people might do maybe 1 or 2 or 3 different positions. But there's always an opportunity to do something new. And I often try that. It often doesn't work. But most of the works are pre-planned ahead of time later on in my life. Yeah.
I mean, your early projects were not commissioned. You just did them. Then they were commissioned. How do you finance these big projects?
The early projects were self-supported. I quickly ran out of money because I was printing everyone works and then signing them and then taking everyone out for breakfast. And in fact, I once organized a breakfast at an old Jewish delicatessen on Delancey Street. And as the people were putting on their clothing, walking right into the delicatessen, because that's where the photograph was, the police were arresting me in handcuffs.
So they had to have breakfast alone,
right?
Without you.
Exactly.
How often, by the way, were you arrested?
Excuse me?
How often were you arrested at the time?
Well, in New York City, in handcuffs 3 times, detained 5.
How do these reactions on your work mirror even cultural differences?
I think there's this community of nonconformists that are naked bohemians that inside, they've never done it, but they want to do it. And I think there's a connectivity between different countries and the sensibilities of people that want to be nude in art and people that and how they're separated from the nudist. It's a very different bunch of people, but I think it's the bravest, brightest, most wonderful people in the city that want to participate.
Your work has a strong political implications. You spoke about the work in Switzerland, but also there was a work you criticized Trump,
right?
And there is other works which are very political, and in the end, the work itself, presenting nude people in public has a political impact. Do you consider yourself to be a political artist?
Well, I sometimes dip into that arena, and it's more of me shouting out, shouting with the work. And it's very difficult for a contemporary artist to have a voice and to get that voice out there. So I'm very lucky to be able to elevate certain issues, but I don't do it that often. But when I do it, I give my heart to it. And I think also the nude body in politics is political enough to also pile on different issues on top of that. Often is not needed. Yeah.
Let's speak about maybe 2 single projects which I came across. One is the Mexico City project, which was enormous. I think 18,000 people participated. Were you overwhelmed?
I was, because I didn't let 2,000 in, because the sun was coming up over the government building, and I was shooting on the balcony of a restaurant on the other side of the Zocalo. And so I see the sun rising, and they're still letting people into the gates. And if I didn't stop them, I would never be able to make the photograph because of incredible lens flare.
So even more people wanted to participate than you could take.
More people. So we invited 40,000 people, but only 20,000 showed up, because usually only half the amount that sign up on the form show up. So 18,000 people eventually participated. It was a wonderful morning. I did many different setups, and so I think the country with the most people wanting to be nude in my art is Mexico.
Just a practical question. How do people find their clothes again after the shooting?
Right. Well,
18,000 people, no?
Right. Well, often the clothing is directly next to the people, but out of the frame of the work.
Right.
So when you look through a camera lens, the framing actually makes a V from the camera to the farthest angle. So if the people are within this V, then the clothing is right here or right here, but not in my frame.
There was also criticism about your work. Some people thought the organized masses remember to Leni Riefenstahl's ornamental work in Germany, and the images kind of communicate a message of mass conformity and compliance. What do you think about this?
Well, the documentation from World War II is often hundreds of thousands of people. I think, 1,000 people to 2,000 people is a medium-sized venue for a Radiohead concert. I think people think of the naked body as more aggressive than it actually is. To me, it's not so much about, dictatorship or mass conformity, but it is about creating this color field of pinks and tans and browns, and trying to create a soft sculpture and a heartfelt sculpture. There is a vulnerability to the body that becomes stronger and sends a message out not only in a visual way, but in also a social and harmonious way throughout the city. And I think it creates a dialogue for peace, for love, and for acceptance of the body, not only in art, but also in public space, that it's not aggressive, it's not pornography.
What do you think is your most important project you did?
Important to me is sometimes when I get recognized by an institution that has, sort of the gatekeepers involved, and somehow I get through the doors and I'm commissioned by them and making a work, and it really is fulfilling. And then other times is working in a country where it's going through some turmoil, such as Venezuela, and making a work in Caracas was important to me because of just the social and political turmoil that's happening there.
Is there anything you always wanted to do but yet didn't happen? A dream?
Yes, I've always wanted to make a work in Washington, D.C., but the institutions are not private institutions, they're public institutions. And so it's very difficult to get permission to work with the naked body in the US or in D.C. The Smithsonian is never going to commission me to do a work. And so there's not many arts organizations. So I've been trying to think of ways to do works possibly with sponsorship from a company that does some art sponsorship. So unfortunately, I can't afford to do it myself. I might have to get some commercial entity that doesn't sort of turn it into a commercial, but yet gives me the funding to make the work. So Washington, D.C. would be on the mall, in front of the Treasury Department, maybe making a big bird bath of money and people and chaos.
If this ever happens, invite me, I'm coming.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll put you in the back, like traditionally.
Okay. Like we did in Kunsthalle.
Right. Yeah. Gerald was like, "Fuck it," and just ran into the back. I never knew he posed until afterwards, but he actually got in. So thank you.
Thank you. So Spencer, thank you for your time and thank you for watching.
EIKON ist eine internationale Zeitschrift für Fotografie und Medienkunst, die seit 1991 vierteljährlich erscheint. Ich freue mich sehr auf die neue Kooperation mit dem Art Institute Vienna und dass wir dank dieser mit R9 nun auch im Fernsehen zu sehen sind. Jedes Heft auch ein individuelles Themenheft mit der Rubrik im Fokus, wo wir internationale Kuratorinnen und Kuratoren, Expertinnen und Experten einladen, auf aktuelle kulturpolitische Geschehen einzugehen.
Ja, und ich darf Sie einmal im Monat, am letzten Sonntag des Monats bei KunstMatt, bei EIKON herzlich begrüßen. Im Übrigen sind wir auch auf der Homepage des Art Institute Vienna zu sehen.